here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat, bringing you psycho-sexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
I find that personally when I'm thinking of speaking on, anytime you're speaking on sexuality, or for me, it's psychedelics or kink and BDSM, it can be controversial. It can stir people's feelings, and so it's like putting things out there into the public and saying, "Hey, this is what I believe, and this is what I'm seeing, and this is what I want to create conversation around that." And then you're met with people's unprocessed stuff, or their own judgments, or their own unconscious programming. And for you to stay in this space of openness and being sensitive and being sensual or connected with your body, and to meet the discomfort outside there, how do you navigate that?
I think what really helped is I was able to understand that normal entertainment was also very effective propaganda. And so I think for myself, when I stopped looking at mainstream media as exclusive entertainment and facts, which is like in the backdrop, and so I looked at it, I was like, that was entertaining, that was propaganda. That was also very skillful propaganda. And so there's a way in which when I look at the way I consume and the way I'm exposing myself to the culture, I don't come in believing it. And so that helps my nervous system really navigate layers of the mainstream culture pretty easily now at this stage. The other piece is almost like, I remember one time I was at church back in the day, I was young, and someone brought some homegrown tomatoes, like little cherry tomatoes. And at that point in my life, I had never had tomatoes except for ones at the store that were like really like kind of rubbery, had no flavor. And I was just like, I just thought tomatoes were to me, And so I go back in the back and grab some tomatoes that are growing in someone's garden, and I pop one in my mouth. I was like, this is amazing. Like, what else I've been doing with tomatoes all my life? What's wrong with the store? Like, why aren't all tomatoes taste as well? And so I didn't know about, I did ag culture in high school. I didn't understand the whole, ag business and how food got to us and how it may change the flavor, how it might get to us. So that was the way. But my point is that the tomato is what I got to taste when I got to cry for the first time and beheld as a full being. The tomatoes I got to taste when I got to be able to like follow in the platonic cuddling touch with other Black men and we see each other. I got to taste the tomato and I got, oh, this is now easy. I go to the store and see tomatoes. I might even buy one accidentally here and there. The idea is I'm not confused. These tomatoes are not complete tomatoes. If you go to like, Safeway, Costco, Stater Brothers, if you go to like Whole Foods, you get a little better. They got some tomatoes with bumps on them, but not to put them all in the store in trouble. But the point is that for a raised poor Black child in the high desert, I didn't have access to a lot of these foods early on until they were growing out of their own garden. So my point is that once you taste a tomato, it becomes easier to engage with mainstream culture, a lot more empathy, a lot more tenderness, a lot more patience, because you have that kind of exposure in your body. And I think everyone I've talked to finally have crossed that threshold of being fully human or more fully human. It's much easier for them. It's painful. It's grief, right? I feel grief when I get postured by another Black male who's like scared and trying to like be strong and tough, and he doesn't realize he doesn't have to dominate me. I'm not trying to dominate him. That he is fine where he is, and that we don't. None of this dance is actually important. This is lineage that we don't need to actually. I know that, but I still grieve that. But there's a way that I am no longer. I am so uninvested in that version of masculinity and Black masculinity, particularly in the United States, that I feel very much grief, but deep, deep joy that I know the flavor of that homegrown tomato in my body. That's the piece that's easy for me. That becomes easy.
Oof, oh my God. I literally felt that in my entire body. I don't know if you noticed, but I just sighed with that. And that felt really good to hear around that tomato. How do you, and speaking to that last reference that you had, or that example of coming across another man who's holding that fight mentality, in that fear state, how do you address that, or how do you invite them into, or do you invite them into this, in this space of tenderness?
as much as I can. One of the griefs of this work is that you can't get to everybody. There are some folks that are too committed, or just the circumstances are too extreme that you can't reach for. What's been amazing is the majority actually are down if you have a little more time and space and a little bit of budget to do so. Sometimes you're in a store, you're in a parking lot, you can't necessarily do a 6-month workshop in 5 minutes of conflict or discomfort, or whatever it might be. And the ratios are dramatically high of success when I have time to just remind them. The word I'm using here is remind them of who they are as a full human being, because all of us grew up as babies and young people. We didn't have all this propaganda in our bodies. So I just remind them that they can be tender, they can feel and be okay with me. But they're like, I'm not here today once you show up tender. So that's been huge. So the ratio has been high. The how is nuanced. It's a phrase I say almost as a mantra every day: stay creative while taking on the impossible. Now, I use that in almost all parts of my life, but it's so relevant when it comes to trying to just break down those barriers that are constant in reaching across Black man to Black man in a tender place. And I remember working with the Black man, he says, Aaron, it's to talk about sex, not a problem. So even look at porn, not a problem. Look, it's like it's like I'm almost numb to it now because there's so much images in myself. Or I get, but the tenderness, platonic touch, hair is in my body. Like uncomfortable. Do I have vocabulary? Do I have tools? Like if the tender platonic narrative is the most terrible. I don't have websites I can go to and just watch hours of brothers just cuddling. I don't have propaganda on Instagram of brothers just cuddling all the time. I don't have like language. I don't have like all these people celebrating. I don't have music videos of hip hop or whatever else of brothers. I'm cuddling with homies and my stuff. We don't have any of that. We don't have any of that just narrative. We have all the opposite. So the narrative that comes down to us being able to be tender in this conversation is so hard to find. It's so impossible. Thank you so much. And so for me, I just want to bring in the context that when I look at Black men in this world and the intimacy they carry, that piece feels terrifying. And it also is a medicine too. So I think there's a way in which the hard part is the human part. The hard part is the platonic piece. The farther we go into actual sex itself, it gets easier. It's like, oh, it's like we've got videos for that. So for me, because platonic touch for Black men is not Googleable, that becomes the challenge of my work and why I can't come in with any one idea. I have to come in very much like an artist and being like, where is the heart going to open today? Is it singing? Is it this clay ball here that I keep near me and I carry them around? Is it earth? Is it earth building? Is it some kind of sports? Is it wrestling and we go into space? What is and music and earth building have been my go-tos. Walking in nature with feet off and just kind of movement. Exercise has been a good entry point. So we don't even touch each other for the first time. We touch like the earth, and then we start touching like the air, notice the sun, then we start singing, and eventually we get to the handhold, which is like, that's the first offer. Can I hold your hand for a couple of minutes? That's that. Once we get to that point, that's Mount Everest right there. We can work out, bench press 500 pounds, but to reach over and hold each other's hand for like 2 minutes, it's like, okay, Aaron, I'm not good. I'm straight. I'm just gonna hold your hand because you're homies, right? I understand all that. I'm not confused. I just want to notice you. All of a sudden, the body settles. And that body settles, and we're holding hands. Like that sometimes take a year. It could take 6 months, a couple hours. But when that happens, that's emotionally like 1,000 pounds being benched. That's what that is.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.